Welcome to the podcast series showcasing the winners of the 2024 Dyslexia Canada Educational Excellence Awards. We established this award to honor the outstanding contributions of individuals nationwide who work tirelessly to advance core pillars of Dyslexia Canada's mission, ensuring that all Canadian children have access to universal early screening and evidence-based, systematic, explicit foundational reading instruction. Right now, just over half of Canadian children are living in provinces committed to implementing that. Ontario has implemented a new language curriculum and released a new universal policy in 2023. The team at the Near North District School Board has not only embraced the new curriculum, but also been a trailblazer who first recognized the need for systemic changes to improve outcomes for children with dyslexia and reading difficulties, particularly in light of the Ontario Human Rights Commission Right to Read Inquiry Report and the introduction of the new curriculum. They are the recipients of the 2024 Dyslexia Canada Educational Excellence Awards. Well, all right, let's introduce everyone now. We have Stephen Krause, a K-12 student achievement and well-being principal, Michael Watson, a grade 7 and 8 student success math and literacy lead. There's Lisa Rogers, Amy Bartlett Gibson, Geneva DiBernardo, Lorianne Hazelhurst, who are school-based literacy facilitators. And Rebecca Felsman is also a member of the team, but could not participate in this recording. Congratulations to all of you. So, Steve, when did your team first recognize the need for systemic changes to improve outcomes for children with dyslexia and reading difficulties?
From a system perspective, we give credit to our lead speech pathologist, Kara Macy, who effectively raised the flag for us and got us to see, through some perseverance, that the literacy programming being supported by the program team and delivered in our classrooms and literacy intervention spaces was not effective in teaching students to read. I remember Kara sharing her experiences of working with educators in support of students who were having trouble with their reading, and having the teachers share classroom routines and student activities without being able to identify the phonemic awareness or decoding content that they were explicitly teaching. In 2019, we began to intentionally adjust our course as a district. We were looking for a resource to support building teacher capacity through its implementation and could be rolled out relatively quickly and easily. We landed on the Haggerty program for phonemic awareness for our kindergarten classes. The response from educators across our system was overwhelmingly positive, and from there, we continued driving forward.
Now, Lisa, this was at a time when it wasn't even mandated by the province yet.
I noticed that we had some students who weren't able to read well enough to access curriculum. About 15 years ago, I began looking into programs to support these students, and I actually went and asked to be part of a group of educators trained in a literacy intervention program for older students. I was able to deliver that program for a few years, and it actually changed the trajectory of the lives of some of the students. It was one of the most valuable things I was able to do as a teacher up until that point. It helped a lot of students, but not all. And at this time, resources were shifting into a heavier focus in primary literacy. So as time went on, I started to notice that more students were struggling with foundational literacy skills, including students with and without identifications. On IEPs, these struggles were most often in phonological awareness and expressive and receptive language skills, particularly in reading and writing, what we know as dyslexia. I worked for a year in a system role for special education, trying to support those students as an inclusive technology teacher, which helped many of these students with IEPs. But again, there were those who really needed more support in reading because even the tools were hard to navigate without stronger decoding skills. So to speed things along, 5 years ago, I started noticing patterns in a group of students who were successful in reading in our school. And I followed that trail back to one of our feeder schools where a reading intervention based in the science of reading was happening. I didn't know that this program was based in the science of reading at that time, but I knew that it was working. And I was so excited about this discovery that I introduced myself to the principal of the school and said, "Hey, do you know that all the students coming to us from your school are able to read at grade level?" And that principal was actually Steve Krause. So knowing what I know now about this idea of reading levels, I think the important piece was that really those students were able to access curriculum, and that wasn't the case for all of our students. So I started talking to anyone who would listen about the fact that there were interventions out there that could help this growing number of struggling readers. I also connected with the resource teacher at Steve's school who helped me support my own daughter at the time, who was guessing at words more than she was reading. Our family started working on the alphabetic code together at home from then on, and she was learning to read. It was really working. And so I was even more motivated to learn about the science of reading, which at that time in our board, luckily, included attending webinars with speech language pathologist Kara Macy that Stephen Krause and other key leaders in our program department like Laurie Forth and Chris Walkling had organized. I also got to attend a meeting about reading struggles in the system organized by Steve, Laurie, and Chris for secondary school teachers. Our conversations about how to support our readers have been ongoing ever since, and to the absolute credit of our system leaders, have included all educators right from the beginning. So I feel really lucky to be a part of those conversations that started way back when. And our system leaders' willingness to listen to educators right from the beginning is one of the key reasons this work has been and continues to be successful. These conversations that happen to this day are all over the board, and they carry and they spread this work. So Steve, there's a very big thank you in there. You generate and make space for many of these conversations, which we are all very grateful for. So,
Mike, your school board is known as an early trailblazer in screening. What noticeable outcomes have you observed so far?
I think one of the most notable outcomes would have to be just the sheer number of students that have been screened, especially considering, as you mentioned, that these screeners were completed before any legislation mandating their use. So as of March, which was when the middle of year collection window closed, our educators had completed 8,977 assessments. So this means that we have beginning and middle of the year data for approximately 75% of our students in kindergarten all the way through to grade 8. The numbers are even more impressive when you look at our youngest learners. We now have information on the reading skills of 89% of kindergarten students, 90% of grade 1 students, and 92% of grade 2 students in our schools. I really think the numbers reflect the willingness and dedication of our educators who recognize the importance of early screening and the data that it provides, as well as the work that our school-based literacy facilitators have been engaged in, working alongside these educators every step of the way.
Geneva, can you elaborate on some of the initiatives that are currently underway at your board that are aimed at enhancing the literacy levels of all the students?
I think we have to think a lot about our screeners. We've had a laser-like focus on data, which I think has been really key. We've been using Acadians as well as diagnostics when we need to dig deeper. We've been using core diagnostics for our more striving learners, and they've allowed us to assess students with the amount of precision that we've not before experienced. So this has been a really big shift for everyone, and overall a very positive one. There's been a lot of buy-in from our educators in the board. And so teachers have expressed that moving away from the leveled system, the A to Z system that we formerly used, with a focus now on building students' skills, has really empowered them. So, because alongside this precision of assessment comes a precision with which we can make instructional choices. We've really tried to focus on strong tier 1 or that universal instruction. That's been a large focus for us. Again, highly influenced by our data, but also knowing that this is where we can make the greatest gains and decrease the number of students at risk for reading failure. And it also lessens the load on special education supports, on literacy intervention supports. Yeah, we've also done a lot of work alongside literacy intervention teachers, building their knowledge of how to administer and interpret the data, what to administer and when, and as well as learning alongside them the high-yield instructional practices that will make the differences for these students. These intervention educators are not only working with our most striving learners, but they often served as literacy leaders in our individual schools as well.
We're trying to keep a literacy focus on all of our system professional learning and our district PD days. We have the school-based literacy facilitators supporting school teams and individual educators as they work within a framework of 6-week iterative cycles of improvement. In our board are LIFT projects. So LIFT is an acronym for Teacher Learning and Innovation Allocation. Those projects have really become a very effective avenue for professional learning, especially given our current context of teacher supply shortages. And so we have our literacy team working on a variety of LIFT projects across the system. Also, we have as a priority curating and collecting literacy resources and housing them on an online SharePoint site for all of our administrators and educators, and really take some pride in really kind of vetting those resources carefully and really having resources that reflect best practices and try to make the navigation for educators as easy as possible.
And where do you see it going from here?
That feels like $1 million question. We'd like to say it keeps going forward. So really, we're at a point now where we've had a lot of buy-in, and now the ministry has mandated some of our screening that needs to take place. So we're really getting to the point where we're collecting nice data sets on our students and our learners. And so I feel as a system, we're at a point of collectively really being able to analyze that data in a way that's going to help educators and school teams make programming and instructional decisions that benefit kids and help them with their reading and writing. So yeah, it feels like we are, we've had this really strong start, and we are in the thick of the learning and shifting practices in the classroom. I think another really important piece that's come to light through our work is that as we start to see kind of a bit of a visual of our students who are struggling with their reading and who need that extra support, we initially saw, as I know from speaking with other districts, they did as well, that there were a fairly high percentage of kids who were kind of falling below benchmark in our screening assessments. And so one of the things that's doing is that's really prioritizing the need for our classroom instruction to shift in a way that's going to meet the needs of these students.
Lorianne, can you talk about some of the challenges that you've faced? It sounds like you've had plenty of success, but I'm betting that there was probably some growing pains along the way as well.
Absolutely. Alongside a lot of the successes that we have had, this work is not without several challenges. One of the most significant challenges in beginning to effectively implement evidence-based instruction is that there are so many components that need to be taught to mastery in order to become a proficient reader. For most teachers, very much, I'm emphasizing the word most teachers, learning about how to use evidence-based strategies is brand new learning. So when you think about the model of Scarborough's rope, we can see that fluent word reading and comprehension are achieved when we have strong decoding skills and strong language comprehension skills. So this simple view of reading sounds simple enough, but when you start to break down decoding and language comprehension, you begin to see all of the moving parts. On the bottom of the rope, you've got phonemic awareness, letter sound knowledge, automaticity with sight words, and this short list of highly complex skills is just to get kids to be able to decode. That's obviously not all we want. if we want them to be able to understand what they read at a deep level, we also need to ensure that they have a wide breadth and depth of vocabulary knowledge, solid background knowledge of the topics they read about, a strong understanding of syntax, and refined verbal reasoning skills. So there's a lot to take on. When we began our journey into evidence-based instruction, we started by focusing on the bottom of Scarborough's rope with a focus on developing strong decoding skills with our youngest learners. Because when you can't get the words off the page, nothing else really matters. We decided to purchase Flyleaf as our explicit and systematic phonics program that was not only a very effective tool for teaching all students how to decode, but the most powerful part for us was that this resource was a very effective teacher learning tool. I'm one of the teachers that worked as a literacy intervention teacher when Flyleaf was purchased, and the learning that I did as a teacher was incredible. So supporting teachers with how to deliver effective structured literacy lessons continues to be an area of focus for our team. And this is only one small but very integral part of using evidence-based instruction to begin to close reading gaps.
Lisa, do you see any challenges when it comes to trying to roll out the program province-wide?
I think this is a really important question, and I really think it comes back to collaboration and teamwork. That's really what we've relied on in moving our system into this place where screening is integral to what we do. We've worked together to learn about why screening is important in identifying and serving our students at risk, because we believe that being able to read is first and foremost an equity. So it's something we're very passionate about, and we have to collaborate about. Our students at risk often have dyslexia and our struggles with phonological awareness, expressive and receptive language skills, in reading and writing. So implementing screening and those further diagnostics like the phonics surveys have really been whole school efforts. Our administrators have been supporting staff with coverage and professional development and opportunities and resources. And our teachers have really been supporting one another in understanding how to use the phonics surveys. Our resource teachers, our literacy intervention teachers, our classroom teachers have all had to be on board to create that consistency and alignment in our instructional environments. The program team actually purchased and dispersed many of our structured literacy resources during the pandemic. So alongside the educator support over the past 2 years has been really critical in supporting that consistency to help our educators develop comfort and proficiency and fidelity with the new resources. That's really important. We know how important it is for striving readers to engage in strong Tier 1, 2, and 3 instruction, that those 3 spaces need to be aligned, consistent, and additive. So the cumulative effect is the repetitions that those striving learners need. Collaboration is essential for that. I can think of an example that illustrates this. Earlier this week at a meeting of literacy intervention teachers, they spoke about the need to communicate with specific speech language pathologists who are working with individual students so that we can align the focus of the grapheme phoneme correspondences being taught, as well as like even the gestures that are used to support students in marking the phonemes as we blend and segment words. This collaboration is needed for that consistency to reduce the cognitive overload for students receiving, say, for example, speech interventions and Tier 1, 2, and 3 instruction. We also, we really have the need for collaboration always firmly in our running to-do list as a literacy team. We are interested in continuing to collaborate more with our resource teachers and our special education teams to support their work that they do in this area, because again, it's such a team effort. And Steve spoke briefly to the LIFT projects, which have been really incredible too. There's examples of teachers working together there to align supports for even individual students that I wouldn't mind sharing. Our Learning Innovation Fund for Teacher projects have been not exclusively, but overwhelmingly about literacy for the last 2 years. Many of these lifts focused on specific students who struggled. So teachers would bring students that they really wanted to help to the table, and together we would collaborate and try to come up with ideas that would be able to be implemented throughout, again, Tier 1, 2, and 3, so that we could support those students. And the result of these collaborations has been students with dyslexia and other challenges in reading moving forward, gaining confidence, which I think is really important, and ultimately becoming readers. So it just takes a village to support all of our students until every child can read, right?
Steve, what sort of advice would you have for other teams that will be taking up this challenge as more schools start to get involved in this?
Great question. And I think that I would like district and literacy teams to be aware of the dance between the urgency and the need to be unforgiving and courageous about the de-implementing of literacy practices and resources that we know do not serve students, and the fact that the changes desired across the system take time and a lot of work and support from all departments within a district, especially those educators who are making adjustments to their beliefs and practices around teaching their students to read and write. I believe that the teaching of all our students to read and write, because we know this is possible, is a mission worth fighting for. And I encourage everyone to directly confront the systemic and individual barriers that get in the way of this happening. I know that I am grateful for the literacy team to be working in collaboration around this very critical work.
Amy and Lisa, can you tell me about some of the moments that you've had in the classroom that have inspired you and maybe helped you to stay motivated?
I was just in a school, like a couple days ago, and it was actually an occasional teacher who came in, and she just looked at me and she said, I'm really noticing a lot of kids are actually reading. And I know it seems obvious, but she said, and she was an occasional teacher who had been at this school for a long time. And she just said, I can really see that the work that is happening at this school is making a huge difference. So I think that's just a nice story of not a classroom teacher, but somebody who is coming into schools and working alongside students. And she just really acknowledged that she's noticing a difference.
I have one as well. Over the last 2 months, we have had a parent working with her son at one of the schools nearby. And the parent had connected with the school with some concerns that her son was not happy in school and was striving to be a better reader and wanted to help, which I thought was, this is such a good opportunity to build some good relationships and some really good learning opportunities. So the principal and I of this school got together and we came up with some ideas. We actually first did a phonics survey for the student and determined that the student had a really strong knowledge of sight words, but was unable to read nonsense words well. So we were able to determine that the student was really needing some more support in what the patterns are that are inherent in our language. And so we sort of went through and figured out some of the patterns that the student really needed to spend some time with and collected some word lists and sentences that focused on one pattern at a time. So we followed a bit of a scope and sequence for this home learning program and sent that home learning program along, and mom and son read together every night. It was only about a 5-minute routine. They would read all of the word lists that related to the pattern and all of the sentences 3 times with a goal of reading with more accuracy and more automaticity each time. The principal is super excited about this because the student who had prior to this, really neat kind of homemade home intervention had really been struggling because the student had had so many struggles with behavior. These struggles seem to have sort of moved away. The student is happy, the teacher is happy, the principal's happy, and the parent is happy. So I think it just goes to show, when we use a scope and sequence, when we use what we know, when we use data, we can really support students in becoming proficient readers, and then they have the world at their fingertips, right? So that's one example. And there's so many.
Did any of you have any doubts about this style of educational instruction at the beginning?
No.
Yes. I'm not sure I would label myself as being a skeptic, but I was really concerned about the explicit teaching and really going into that phonemic awareness and that basic decoding teaching was going to impact students' love of reading and really just kind of needing to transition to the idea that if kids are going to love reading when they can read and really understanding that this was not going to interfere with that love of reading, but that it was actually going to enhance it because kids were going to be successful and enjoy the process so much more. So yeah, I was worried that we were going to move into kind of a kill and drill situation, and that was going to have a negative impact on some of our kids.
If I can just add in, it's Amy again, just about the screening piece. And I noticed, I know I definitely felt skepticism amongst our educators in the system. It was a really big shift to go from the running record system that everybody was very comfortable with to using a screening tool. Everything from the method of delivery to the timed system to the types of passages, everything was very, very different. And there was certainly skepticism amongst educators, but also as a literacy facilitator, I felt unsure about our ability to shift an entire belief system and practice and system-wide. And I think we can certainly speak to the fact now that we've been able to develop educators' depth and understanding about the purpose of a screener, even just the language of a screener and the vocabulary of that was new to our system and to our educators. And I think educators have a depth of understanding of its purpose. They can see how it links to expectations and the right to read report in our curriculum. They are beginning to learn how to understand how to use it to support instructional next steps and to use progress monitoring to monitor students. And they certainly are becoming more fluent and competent with the digital system as well. So, from a screening perspective, I certainly understood and saw the skepticism that our educators had, as well as that we had. It was a very big task to make that shift.
Hey, congratulations again on winning this award. It really sounds like you've all been doing some amazing work and seeing some success that is benefiting the students and the community. And I'm really happy that you're being recognized for that.
I just wanted to thank you so very much for this opportunity. We enjoyed preparing for this podcast and just reflecting on the journey that we've been on. So thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the series showcasing the winners of the 2024 Dyslexia Canada Educational Excellence Awards. To learn more about this year's winners, visit dyslexiacanada.org, where you can read a blog about each of them. Now stay tuned for our next episode.